So please, I want to welcome to the stage John Tory, Mayor of Toronto, to the stage for an important presentation. I also invite to the stage President Fro, MNC President Caron, President DeBoschi, and Senator Burnell to join us on the stage as well. So before we introduce Mayor Tory, we'd like to take the moment to compliment the City of Toronto's Parks and Recreation Department staff for their assistance on Olympic Island. Their extra efforts to support our events yesterday evening were sincerely appreciated. Mayor Tory, please convey our thanks to your department. Now for an introduction, John Tory is the 65th Mayor of Toronto. He was born and raised in Toronto and was elected in 2014 and re-elected in 2018. Mayor Tory has worked to build the city up as a global hub of technology and innovation. He has worked to secure billions of dollars in support from the Government of Canada and the Government of Ontario for transit expansion, affordable housing, and infrastructure investments. The Mayor has been leading Toronto's response to COVID-19 and ensuring that the city does everything it can to help people get through the pandemic. The Mayor is determined that Toronto will come back stronger and even stronger than ever, and continues to focus on the city's reopening. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mayor. Really nice meeting you again.
Well, Hank, thank you very much. And I normally would start any speech, and I find, quite frankly, I've been on my feet speaking for a number of years at this and before. And when I will sort of kibitz a little bit at the beginning of a speech, of course, it relaxes me, but also I get relaxed because people smile a little bit and it makes you feel at ease up here. But today's a very important and very special occasion. I don't want to take away from that, except to say that when you compliment the Parks Department or any department of the city government or any aspect of the city government or any member of the city government, this is not what we're used to hearing. And so I find it most welcome, and you can be sure that the minute I go back to the office, I will convey to the Parks, Forestry and Recreation staff, who are such dedicated people, how grateful you are for the work that they've done. May I say, Tansi, good afternoon to everyone. And I want to thank you very much for welcoming me to this year's annual assembly. And I would like to acknowledge Senator Suzanne Brunel, who I see often in the community, President Shirley Debegassi of the Toronto and Region Métis Council, Toronto and York Region, President Margaret Fro of the Métis Nation of Ontario, President of the Métis National Council, Cassidy Caron, and as well as the other many local, provincial, and national Métis political leaders that are here today. I will tell you first and foremost, because I think it's the first time in a long time, that it's an honor for us to have this assembly taking place in the city of Toronto. There are many places you could meet, and we're just very grateful that you could be here because it's special to have you here, and it provides me with a special opportunity to do something that has been a long time in coming. But we are not just the biggest city in the country, but we are the city in the country that is its most diverse, the most diverse in the world, in fact. But that includes, in a very special way, the largest and most diverse Indigenous population in all of Canada, and in an urban setting. And that means that we have a responsibility, and that it is our privilege to develop a special relationship with Métis leaders. I was earlier this year, and I don't know if I could describe to you. I'll be honest and say to you that I had, when I became mayor, there are many issues that fall onto your plate and that you have to sort of start to learn about and to deal with. And I've placed a dramatically increased focus on Indigenous related issues in the last couple of years, and that corresponded with the fact that we set up, or coincided with the fact we set up an office very capably run by Selena Young, who I think you all know very well, and we are blessed to have her in the City Hall as part of an office that has helped us to devote greater attention to this. I was helped a great deal by a retiring councillor, Mike Layton, who had a keen and abiding interest in these issues for a long time. And it helped me. I mean, people often think that we're opponents or competitors in that setting, but he helped me to understand the importance of addressing these issues in a meaningful way. And I myself, for example, have initiated meetings with a lot of the agencies serving Indigenous communities in Toronto and have learned an immense amount from them, to the point where, for example, the very bold initiatives we're now taking where we have Indigenous organizations as partners, true partners, in building a phenomenal amount of housing is a testament to what I heard from those agencies, where they simply said, don't tell us you're going to do it for us. Don't tell us how you're going to do it, or you know better for us what we need. Bring us as true partners to the table and we will do it with you. And that is something that I've learned in the last little while. And it very much guided the preparation of our reconciliation action plan. And it's the first time, of course, the city's had one, and it was approved not that long ago by the City Council, and will guide the Toronto Public Service and the Council over the next 10 years in bringing about truth and justice and reconciliation. But I want you to know that I acknowledged on the day that it was passed, which was a very important thing, first of all, that we still had much more to do. Drawing up the plan, as thoughtful as it might be, is one thing, but implementing it is something entirely different. But I also acknowledged that because it was a document that by definition, well, we consulted on it in that sense, that way that governments do, and I think that it's always with the best of intentions, that it is still a document coming out of City Hall, dealing with the part of the community that knows best what is going to constitute a truth and reconciliation action plan. And so I said on that day that it was the first day, not the last day. It was the first day because I wanted increasing ownership of that plan to be taken up by Indigenous communities in Toronto, so that we would know best how you thought we could deal with that, as opposed to us deciding that in the City Hall. And so I just start off this very important thing that I'm about to do by telling you that I recognize that. And I also said at that time that I had taken to heart, because I think it is one of those little phrases that sums everything up. Nothing about us without us. And that came, of course, from the Truth and Reconciliation report. And it just says nothing about us without us. I don't think I have to explain it, because I think the phrase speaks for itself. So at the meeting at which the City Council adopted the Reconciliation Action Plan, City Council also acknowledged the city's role in contributing to the militarized action against Métis people in the 1880s, and requested the mayor to apologize on behalf of the City of Toronto. And so, on behalf of the City of Toronto, I would like to do that now, and I'm going to just read the apology to you. It starts off, it's dated August 19th, 2022, Tansy. The City of Toronto is committed to advancing truth, justice, and reconciliation with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Canada has learned from the findings of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, as well as other inquiries, that reconciliation cannot be achieved without first addressing the hard truths of our past. One of the guiding principles of the TRC is that healing relationships requires public truth-sharing, apology, and commemoration that acknowledge and redress past harms. One such truth that has been largely overlooked for more than 100 years is the City of Toronto's role in the Northwest Resistance of 1885 in what is now the province of Saskatchewan. To begin, let me provide a historical snapshot of Toronto in the late 1800s, as it was a far different city than it is today. Toronto had a population of around 100,000 people. 93% of its residents were British and 85% were Protestant. Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away, the Métis, led by Louis Riel, were fighting for rights to their land following an influx of white settlers and a decline in bison that threatened their way of life and their very survival. The media coverage of the time regularly described the Métis as wild, miserable, and impulsive half-breeds, and those are all in quotes, and labeled the resistance a rebellion. On March 30th, 1885, the local newspaper, the Toronto World, exclaimed, and I quote, "War, war, war," was the cry, and war it will be until Mr. Riel and his followers bite the dust, close quote. Not long after, the Queen's Own Rifles and Royal Grenadiers, who were based in Toronto, sent hundreds of volunteer militia to join Canada's efforts to suppress the Northwest Resistance. Today, I apologize for the role that the City of Toronto played in contributing to militarized action against Métis people. The City of Toronto financially contributed to the Northwest Resistance by providing supplies to the militia troops. When they returned, those troops, claiming victory, the City of Toronto organized and funded a grand parade to celebrate. At the event, the mayor, surrounded by city council, made a speech honoring the troops. On July 24th, 1885, the Toronto World reported about the event, and I quote, "Over 100,000 people yesterday joined in the warmest welcome that was ever given in this fair dominion to citizen soldiers who had served their country in suppressing armed rebellion. The oldest and youngest inhabitants agreed for once that it was the greatest day Toronto ever witnessed." Close quote. The mayor hosted the first Monument Committee meeting at City Hall to begin working on a statue to commemorate the soldiers. That committee disbanded, and when another group took up the cause years later, the City of Toronto financially contributed to the monument that is still standing in Toronto today. All of these actions by the City of Toronto, funding, celebrating, and commemorating the quashing of the Northwest Resistance, contributed to the overall milieu of hostility towards the Métis. For this, on behalf of Toronto City Council and the City of Toronto, I wholeheartedly apologize. The defeat of the Northwest Resistance and the hanging of Louis Riel on November the 16th, 1885, were the backdrop for a peak of hostility and racism and colonial violence towards the Métis. In Toronto and across the country, Métis were forced to hide their identities for fear of reprisal. As a result, the Métis became the forgotten people. I've heard when listening to community in Toronto that this legacy of oppression continues to have long-term ramifications on the culture and the health and the well-being of Métis people that will require hard work and redress going forward. An apology is nothing without action. This year, as I mentioned, the City of Toronto adopted its first Reconciliation Action Plan. It includes many strategies to address and enhance the relationships with Indigenous communities in Toronto. As part of the plan, the city commits to working together with the Toronto and York Region Métis Council to develop educational programs and commemorative initiatives that further explain the history behind this apology and educate all residents and all visitors to the City of Toronto. We value the contributions that the Council makes in partnership with many other Indigenous organizations to support the urban Indigenous community and in challenging the city to better respond to the rights of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples in Toronto. I hope that apologizing for the role that the City of Toronto and Toronto City Council played in the Northwest Resistance will help the Métis to heal from the injustices of the past, honor the sacrifices of their ancestors, and contribute to the pride of Métis culture and identity for future generations. And it is signed in unity by me, John Tory, as the Mayor of Toronto. I just had just a couple more, so I was flipping all the pages because I had the apology in here too.
Well, don't ever leave the mic.
You figured that out. I just wanted to conclude because I wanted to read the apology by itself and make sure that it didn't get mixed in. I just want to, first of all, thank you for this time today. And I want to tell you that, and I think those who have had a chance to work with me from Indigenous communities will, I hope, attest to the fact that I'm deeply personally committed to walking this path of reconciliation together and to continuing our efforts to make Toronto a city where Métis culture and expertise and ways of being can be respected and can thrive. And I want to assure you that I have taken to heart, by the fact I will say it not once but twice today, the phrase from the National Reconciliation, Truth and Reconciliation Report, "Nothing about us without us," a message that I've heard clearly from Indigenous communities, and it will guide the implementation of the city's action plan. I repeat it many times when I speak, many times. And I almost every time I speak about any issue that remotely connected to any of this, so that I will not only make sure you know that I understand it and I've internalized it in my heart, but also so that you will know that I remember it every single day. This is about Indigenous people and reconciliation, and it is not about Toronto City Hall. And I hope today is an example of the effort that I'm going to make going forward with my colleagues and with our entire public service to make sure that we can work together to accomplish great things. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mayor Tory. At this time, I'd like to invite Senator Burnell to come up and make some comments.
Merci. Thank you, Mayor Tory, for delivering this historic apology to the Métis people and acknowledging the role that the City of Toronto played in the Northwest resistance of 1885. Let me take this off. The recognition that the narrative perpetuated racism and colonial violence towards the Métis, which continues to this day, is deeply significant. There's no question, the apology is a big step forward in the relationship between the Métis and the city. But as you say, an apology is nothing without action. The City of Toronto's Reconciliation Action Plan, which you mentioned, does promise actions on many fronts. It speaks of not only restoring truth, but also to righting relations, to sharing power, to making financial reparations, and more. And as you know, our local Métis Council and Métis citizens who live in Toronto do not yet have a gathering space, not even a space to showcase the apology that you've given us today. So we look forward to renewing the exploration of a home and visibility for the Métis community within the city. We also look forward to working with Toronto to identify other substantial actions that reframes the narrative of Métis history through educational and heritage programming, to share the truth with all of Toronto's diverse citizens and its visitors. Now, as you are aware, this apology is the result of years of relationship building between you, Mayor Tory, Toronto and York Region Métis Council leadership, past and present, our Toronto Aboriginal Support Services Council partners, former City Manager Chris Murray, outgoing Councillor Mike Layton, Indigenous Affairs Officer Director Selena Young and her staff, and the many who contributed to this important work behind the scenes. We are grateful to all who played a role in bringing us to this point. And you know, we are especially grateful for your personal support. Merci, Chimigwich.
Thank you, Senator. Now I would like to call up President Fro to give some remarks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mayor Tory, thank you. Merci for your words. And I want to take this opportunity, as the Senator just did, to actually thank those that were responsible for this coming to be. In addition to the leadership that we've seen from the Mayor and his team, I want to thank the Toronto York Region Métis Council for all the work that you've done building this relationship. I think things change when we see each other, when we listen to each other. And that is what has occurred over the course of the last decade, frankly, in the relationship that the local council here have been building with the city, raising awareness about Métis history, our communities, our culture, and that really is what has brought us to today. And I also want to thank Selena Young and her team. Now, behind folks like Mayor Tory, there is a whole team of people at the city that have helped to drive this. And I want to acknowledge you and your team, Selena, for your work to help facilitate this really beautiful and respectful and I think dynamic relationship that has grown with the Toronto York Region Métis Council and the City of Toronto. So merci. Mr. Mayor, you mentioned in your opening remarks that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission outlines that healing relationships require public truth, sharing, apology, and commemoration that acknowledge and redress past harms. And I've had the good fortune of being with you on a few occasions where I've heard you speak about the importance not just of raising awareness for yourself and for the broader city of Toronto, but of action to achieve real reconciliation. I've heard you talk about it, and we are seeing that today in these actions and this apology. Under your leadership, not just words of action to address historic wrongs, and there are very real historic wrongs, as you've spoken to today, but we're really happy to hear that commitment to continue on with the relationship that our Toronto York Region Métis Council and the City of Toronto have built to get to where we are today, doing that work, educating the public, supporting a healthy, respected, vibrant Métis community here in Toronto. And as you've said, apologies are an important first step. And really, now that we're here today, now we start turning to what's next. And I think you've made reference to the Reconciliation Action Plan, action being the key word. And one of the key components of what you've outlined in that plan is education. And that is just so, so important. Far too many people throughout this area, the province of Ontario, and frankly, our country, don't have the understanding about the impacts of colonialism on Métis, on First Nations, and on Inuit. And they lack the understanding that those impacts are not historic. Those impacts are still with us today. And that includes the impacts of these actions that I think your apologies speak to, the center of hate against Métis that was here in this province. And we've spoken about this when the M&O Secretariat Act was passed in the Ontario legislature. Jagmeet Singh, who is then a member of provincial parliament here, spoke on behalf of the NDP party in support of that legislation, and he talked about the bounty that the Ontario legislature placed on Louis Riel's head. That's the environment that our Ontario Métis communities existed in at that time. There was not just a reign of terror in the West, there was a reign of terror and hate and intolerance here in Ontario. And that's part of the history that our communities here in Ontario carry with them. And so I want to thank you again. As the government representing Ontario, we are taking important steps to move forward in self-government and realizing that dream of our ancestors. And I think building respectful and productive relationships, government to government relationships with all other levels of government, including the City of Toronto, is an important part of being self-determining. We acknowledge and appreciate the support that you and the council have shown to our citizens who live in the City of Toronto, and really through the wonderful work of our Toronto York Region Métis Council. And I will say, we hope to one day see a day when, as the senator was saying, that anti-Métis, anti-First Nation, anti-Inuit racism truly becomes a thing of the past. We thank you for your work that you and your team at the city are doing to help make that a reality. So merci on behalf of all of us to you, and we look forward to continuing with that relationship and seeing the beautiful things that our Toronto York Region Métis Council and the city will get up to. Merci.
So Mayor Tory, if you're looking for a model for the statue in front of City Hall, I'm only available end of September.
Keep that in mind.
At this time, I would like to invite President of the Métis National Council, Cassidy Caron, to say a few words.
Thank you, Hank. Thank you, Your Worship, Mayor Tory, to the Toronto City Council, and really importantly, thank you to the Toronto York Métis Council for the relationship building, the awareness raising, and the advocacy efforts that you've dedicated your time and efforts to. Because without your efforts, I don't know that this would be happening here today. So thank you to all of you who played an incredibly important role in making this happen today. So the words that we just heard the mayor speak this afternoon They are meaningful and they are important, but it's also really important to always recognize that apologies are made real through action and atonement. I have an elder who talks about apologies with me, and she says that we have a closet full of apologies, but little to show for them. And what she's talking about there is the action that must follow these apologies. But really, over the years of the apologies that we've been collecting, what I've come to realize is that the importance of these moments, the moment this afternoon where we're all here, this moment plays an incredibly important role in ensuring that these conversations continue, that we're still talking about this, and that we're remembering what happened in our history. And while I hope that real action comes from today's apology, I do take comfort in knowing that it has again opened a door and renewed the ability to continue these conversations. And these moments for us as Métis people and the Métis Nation, it also renews our passion for the work that we do. It reminds us of our ability to take action on what's important to us, even if others won't, because that's what we do. So Batosh, as I said in my opening remarks this morning, is a large part of my personal family story. My family members fought and died in that battle. Our family homestead was burnt to the ground during the battle, and the women in my family played a critical role in that battle as well, as messengers, as caretakers, and as the matriarchs of our society. And they all suffered during that time. And while I recognize that Batosh is a part of my family story, it may be some of yours who have now chosen Toronto as your home. It might not be the story exactly of your families or your communities here in Ontario, but there are undeniable parallels that need to be spoken of and shared. The Métis of Batosh petitioned for recognition, for fair treatment, and respect for their land rights. And in response, Canada and the City of Toronto, the government, they sent an army. In Rainy Lake, Métis petitioned for those same things, and they were sent a treaty negotiator, one who made empty promises. In Sault Ste. Marie and in Penetanguishene, Métis petitioned again for those same things too. And to this day, they were sent nothing and they have been ignored. Each of our community's stories are unique, they are important, but there are undeniable parallels, those common threads that run through them all, throughout the Métis Nation. And we need to connect those dots, weave those threads together, and raise our voices like what's being done today. We need to recognize that we are one nation of many stories. So let's tell those stories and let's make our ancestors proud. So just to end, again, I want to thank you, Mayor Tory, for your words today. To Torontonians, to Ontarians, to Canadians, I want to encourage you to keep asking questions and working to understand our collective histories and to understand what actions now need to be taken to do the work towards real reconciliation. And to all of our Métis citizens, just remember always to be proud to be Métis. Thank you.
Glasses. I know President Fro's mentioned already, but please, let's have a great round of applause for the Toronto, York, and Métis Regional Council for all the work that they've done with Mayor Tory.